Today is a very gloomy day, which is why the lighting is very bad. Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in May, which it's crazy that we're already in June. The first book that I read is kind of in the cusp of April and May, so I wanted to talk about it in this video. It's a very popular booktube book, which you guys have probably heard about, and it's Flawless, which is the first book in the Chestnut Spring series. At that time, it was exactly the book that I wanted. I wanted something romantic, something that was fast and easy to read with a lot of chemistry. However, when I started it, it was okay, and then after a while, I was kind of like, I'm not really liking this book. I think the guy just gave me the biggest ick ever, because he was one of those guys who is extremely possessive and who would growl at anyone who got too close to the female lead. I also don't like how the relationship was very physical rather than emotional, and I really didn't like how every single time he looked at her, he would always describe her physical aspects, such as like her butt, and talk about like her red cherry lips. Like, I don't care about that, and it felt like at the point he only liked her because of her physical aspects, or that's obviously the initial reason why he was attracted to her. And I feel like it's the same with the girl. She would always describe him as like muscular and tall, and at this point I'm really done with all the really tall man. Like, give me a short king. Okay, like, I'm okay with the guy being short. They don't have to be 6 foot tall to be attractive, nor do they have to be muscular. I then reread Crown of Feathers because I want to continue on with the rest of the series, and the first time that I read it, I really enjoyed it, but rereading it again, I felt like I didn't like it as much as the first time around of reading it. It's a very interesting book. We have animages and phoenix riders, and the whole premise of it is super interesting. However, it did feel very repetitive, and we weren't really doing anything. I don't know if it was because we were still doing the world building, but basically our main character Veronica is in school training to become a phoenix rider, and then not that much is going on. It did have this like plot twist revelation thing in the end, which did actually leave me like gasping, but I just kind of wish that it was more high stakes and that there was more going on in the plot. The Mummy Mayfair was an arc that I received, and it was a very fun book at first. It's basically like a Sherlock Holmes retelling where these two detectives are hired as security in a mummy unrolling, and basically a murder that happens where this guy who was in charge of the mummy unrolling was found in the, what is it called, like not the tomb, but like in the mummy thing. And basically they go around interviewing suspects and everything, which was really fun at first, but then over time it got really boring, and the whole revelation of the antagonist as well was kind of like, it was so obvious because who else could it be? It was a fun book to read, but it also was a little bit boring. I finally finished reading qiang, which I was reading this book since March, and I'm not going to talk about this book that much because I love it. I have a whole video about it, and that's the only thing you need to know about the book, that I absolutely loved it. I decided to finish reading Kamisama Kiss, which I started last month, and I read from volume 7 to 25, which I loved reading it so much. I did watch the anime, so I did have a faint recollection of what the whole story was about, but I think certain bits weren't completed in the anime, and the last volume, just reading it, literally made me cry because it was so bittersweet. It was a happy ending, but I don't know, it just made me feel so emotional and nostalgic. A Nobleman's Guide to Scandal and Shipwrecks was the last book in the Montague sibling series, which is a series that I wanted to finish, and honestly I kind of regret progressing on with this book because the whole entire time I was like, this book is so boring. I felt like there was no plot going on. It was mainly just the characters and the inner monologue and them traversing around the whole world. Other than that, there was nothing going on, and I remember reading it and being like, oh, this is so boring, and I didn't really have the motivation to pick it up, but when I did, it was interesting to read. And I feel like that's an issue I have sometimes with books, where I enjoy it but I'm not super in love with it. And I think for me in this case, I was like, oh, it's taken me a really long time to read it. I feel like I should have DNF'd it from the beginning, but I was kind of like conflicted about whether or not I should actually DNF it. The Husky and His White Cat Shizun, volume 3. I should not have read The Husky and His White Cat Shizun Volume 3 because I wanted to continue on with the rest of the volumes because obviously I want to know what happens, I want to know what people are talking about. However, I regret reading this volume because I think if I stopped at Volume 2, I would have been okay. But now that I read Volume 3, I'm kind of like, oh, I need to know what happens in Volume 4, but the official translations of the books hasn't come out yet. Since the official translations have not been completed, I don't want to read the rest of them, and I don't even know when the official translations will end because I feel like it could take a while for it to fully release, which is why right now I'm not reading the rest of the volumes. I will come back to it in the future, but I know if I start the rest of them, I'm actually gonna cry. I reread the Precious Stone trilogy, which this book is so funny. It's basically one of those books that are so bad that it's so good. We have a family of time travelers where you have to be born on a certain day to be the time traveler. So everyone thinks it's her cousin Charlotte, but surprise, surprise, it's actually our main character Gwyneth, and she's kind of thrusted into this world of time traveling. There's this mystery going on. I really liked the first two books, which is Ruby Red and Sapphire Blue. I liked Gwyneth in that book. I liked the romance and the dynamic of the two characters, and it was really fun. But I think by the last book I was like, I have enough of this, because literally every scene Gwyneth was crying, she was sobbing her eyes out, and then the whole romance got really weird because they started professing their love for each other every single chapter, and they've only known each other for like a couple weeks, and I was like, come on, no way you guys are in love with each other. I'm currently reading Heart of Flames, which is the second book in the Crown of Feathers series. I haven't finished it yet, and I don't think I'm going to finish it until next month. But so far, I feel the same about Crown of Feathers. I am enjoying it. I like the writing, I like the characters, don't like the multiple point of views, and I do feel like it's very repetitive. It's also very long. On my Kindle, it's 700 pages. So depending on the way it ends, I feel like I may not continue on with the rest of the series. I also DNF'd 4 books. I still feel really guilty about DNFing books, but the first 2 were arcs. I DNF'd Queen of Shifting Sands. I'm not going to go too much into it of why I DNF'd it because I had a video where I kind of mentioned it, and there was kind of a lot. So if you want to know more about my thoughts about this book, check my Goodreads out. And then Meet Cute Reboot, I thought was going to be a little cute romance book, but then it's basically a second chance romance where the guy cheated on the girl, and the guy kind of wants to get back together with the girl because he's like, oh my god, she's my one true love, which I hate, because how can you be like, oh, she's my one true love, but then you end up cheating on her, and she obviously doesn't want to get back together with him because he hurt her. Guess what? They obviously get back together. The whole premise was very interesting because it was basically like an AI dating app where it uses AI to match people with each other. However, I just don't like the cheating trope, did not like the man, so didn't finish reading it. Practically Ever After was also a series that I wanted to finish, and it was the last book, and I just wasn't super interested in it because it's a contemporary romance book, but I felt like there was nothing really special about it, and I just didn't really like the main character or her friend group or her girlfriend because I felt like it was all surface level. I had no connection with the characters. They all felt really fake to me, and I don't know, I didn't really want to read it at the moment. I could have finished it, but I think I definitely wouldn't have enjoyed it. And then the last book that I DNF'd was Allegiance, which is the second book to Betrothed. This book is really interesting because we basically have a fairy who lives in the human world because, I don't know, for some reason she can't live in the fairy world, and she's betrothed to the prince. A lot of drama happens, and I decided to read the second book because I couldn't really remember if I liked the first book or not, and I didn't want to reread the first book, so I decided to give the second book a try. And then I was like, yeah, it's not for me because it's so wild, but basically she forgets her betrothed prince and she ends up dating her best friend, and the whole entire time they like both know that they're cheating on each other. For example, the guy, her best friend, knows that she loves her betrothed because she acts differently when she's around him, but he still loves her, so he wants to be with her. And then her betrothed also knows that they have a relationship with each other, and he's like, oh, I'm okay with you guys doing things with each other, but in the end I'm gonna get her back, she's gonna be mine, so enjoy your time with her, but in the end she's gonna be mine. And I was like, this is absolutely ridiculous because they're actively cheating on each other and they know. And it's crazy because one of the lines was like, oh, do you think he would be mad if, you know, we just had our last kiss after he got her back, like the prince got her back? The girl was like, well, right now he's not here, he's in a whole other world, so I think it's okay. And at that point I was like, I have enough, I'm gonna DNF the book. I think the writing as well, the character was very immature, which I didn't really like being her point of view. I felt like she had the main character syndrome where basically everything was easy for her, every character kind of, you know, like surrounded her and like loved her and stuff like that, and I was like, I'm tired of this. So yeah, I decided to DNF it. That's basically all the books that I read in May. To be honest, looking back, I felt like I didn't have the best reading month, and hopefully next month I can read better books. I think I just need to pick what I read carefully and actually DNF books if I'm not enjoying it. But yeah, that's basically all the books that I read in May. Let me know what was your favorite book that you read in May. Give me some recommendations, and I will see you guys in another video.